Howdy, howdy, everyone. Chris here, and welcome back to the garage. Today, we're going to be clear coating the Subaru BRZ, spraying the door and the quarter panel. We're going to be spraying with a low volume, low pressure paint gun, and I'm going to show you some different techniques to keep your overspray low and still get a beautiful looking finish. Some gun settings and some tips that are really going to help you out. So let's dig in and get started.
We're going to mix up some FC710 right here, 4-to-1 clear coat. We're going to do 4 parts. We're going to use a medium activator. Okay, so 4-to-1 mixing ratio right there. We're going to the 4. We'll fill it up to the 4 in the 1 ratio with medium hardener. Bam. That should be enough to get us 2 coats. So we're already using a low volume, low pressure paint gun. We're using this Drizzle D1. This is a low volume, low pressure paint gun that consumes about 5 CFMs. We're gonna dial this back even further so we limit the amount of overspray, we limit the amount of material usage. We're gonna have the fan pattern wide open. I wanna spray at about 25 PSI. In order to spray at 25 PSI, we need to reduce the fluid volume. So instead of going our normal 2.5 turns out on the fluid volume, we're gonna sit at about 1 3/4 to 2. We're gonna start at 1 3/4 from close. So 1 full turn and then 3/4. We're looking for thin, wet coats. So if you want to reduce the amount of overspray, if you start with a low volume, low pressure paint gun, that's going to be a great start. So this Drizzle D1 is a low volume, low pressure paint gun. It consumes about 5 CFMs of air, produces a lot less overspray. If you want to dial that down even more, you need to adjust your air pressure down. But not only that, when you adjust your air pressure down, you need to adjust your fluid volume down. That's going to help to still atomize that clear coat even though you're using less air. So we've got our fluid volume set at 1 3/4 turns out. We're going to set our air pressure at 25 PSI with our fan pattern wide open.
So on this first coat of clear coat, I'm sharing with you how you can limit your overspray even with a low volume, low pressure paint gun, just by dialing down your air pressure. Now remember, if you dial down your air pressure, you also need to limit your fluid volume. So you need to dial that down as well. Those two things work in conjunction with each other. Now your air pressure is going to atomize that clear coat. So if you have low air pressure and you have too much clear coat coming out of the gun, you're going to get orange peel and too much texture in your finish. So you have to dial that fluid volume down as well. Now there are some drawbacks to this. As you can see, I'm having to spray a lot slower than I typically would. So that's very difficult for me to do. So on my second coat, I'm going to bump up my air pressure, and you'll see how I'm able to increase my speed and get the job done a lot quicker. But if you're worried about overspray, you can see this is producing a lot less overspray than typical paint guns. And that's because it's a low volume, low pressure paint gun, and we've adjusted it down accordingly. Even though we're limiting our air pressure and our fluid volume, we're still getting a really good looking, acceptable finish in our first coat of clear. So you can dial these guns down and still get a good looking finish. Now, like I said, you have to paint quite a bit slower, but that may be okay for some of you guys, especially if you're starting out. I hear a lot of painters tell their viewers to open up that fluid volume all the way, and I just don't recommend that if you're new to clear coat and painting. I want you to understand how the air pressure and the fluid volume work together along with your speed and your distance from the panel to atomize that clear coat so you get a nice, flat, good looking finish.
Okay, so for the final coat, this is the first coat. Came out nice, not perfect, a couple little dry spots, but I'm going to bump up the air pressure to 30 psi. I'm going to spray a little bit closer, and my fluid volume is going to be 2 turns out from closed.
Now that I've set my air pressure at 30 psi and I've bumped up my fluid volume to 2 turns out from closed, I can spray much quicker. And I'm going to need to spray a little bit quicker because I'm putting more material on the panel. It's going to atomize just a little bit better. Now, let's talk a little bit about speed and distance. So when you're spraying your clear coat, you want to have a consistent speed throughout the panel, okay? Now, you also want to have a consistent distance from the panel. Now, I'm spraying about 4 inches away, which is pretty close, and that allows me to move a little bit quicker. It allows that clear coat to flow out just a little bit better. You need to find a spraying distance that you feel comfortable with where you get good results. I want you to experiment with it, do a test panel, change your distance, and see how that affects the clear coat and how it affects the finish, and then determine what distance is going to be good for you. You don't need to be afraid of clear coat. It's really not that difficult. What I find that new painters do the most is they spray a little timid. And they're inconsistent in their speed. So when they start spraying, they're going to go slow, and then they speed up, and then they get nervous and they slow down, and that's what's going to cause problems. So if you're consistent with your speed, it's kind of like you're waving that magic wand for a beautiful looking finish. The other thing you want to do is you want to pull your trigger. As you start the pass, you want to pull your trigger off the panel. Never pull your trigger when your gun's pointing at a panel. I know it sounds like common sense, but I've seen it over and over again. People start pulling the trigger right on the panel. Until you get some experience, you need to pull the trigger off the panel and then release the trigger when you're done painting. And that's going to help you out tremendously as well. The other thing is you want to really consider your overlap. So once you make a pass, you want to overlap that pass 80% with your fan pattern. Okay, so if you're just, it doesn't have to be 80%, but if you're consistent with it, you're going to get better results. So this is the finished product with this Inokraft Drizzle D1 low volume, low pressure paint gun. This is a great starter gun, or a gun if you're painting without a booth at home in your garage. If you want to check out this gun, you can find the link in the description. And if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. For more tips, click on this video now. I appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time on Garage Noise.